When a pattern calls for you to increase, what it's asking you to do is add a stitch where there was once one stitch so that there are now 2 stitches. For example, the round that I'm working on right now has 24 stitches in it, and in order to add more stitches to the next round, I need to increase or add 6 increases to the outside. Well, how do you do an increase? Easy peasy. You just take a stitch that used to have 1 stitch in it, and you put in a second. So now there are 2 stitches or an increase in that stitch. So let's say my pattern now calls for 3 SCs and an increase. So what I'm going to do is going 1 SC in the next stitch, 1 SC in the next stitch, 1 SC in the next stitch. Those are 3. And for my increase, I'm just going to work 2 SCs. 1, and into that same stitch a second one, and you can see it kind of creates a cluster shaped V where our single crochets are right here. Here is our increase. In addition to the regular increase, which looks like this, you can do what's called an invisible increase, and an invisible increase is designed to hide that V and make it so the yarn kind of lays on top of itself. Instead of having this big V that you can see, and you can see how the holes between those V's are a little bit bigger, you can see how certain types of yarn that would be very exaggerated and you wouldn't want to be able to see that. So in order to hide that hole or make it less obvious, instead of just working 2 SCs in the next stitch around both loops, we're going to work 1 SC around one loop and 1 SC around the other loop. This will give an illusion that those stitches kind of lay on top of each other rather than being flush next to each other like this. So in order to do that, around the front loop, we're going to work an SC. So, and then this is kind of hard to see on a camera, but here's the back loop. We're going to insert our hook just in the back loop and work our next SC. Now, as we keep going and look back on our invisible increase, it looks a little bit more like they're laying on top of each other rather than right next to one another. It's still created the 2 stitches we need to create an increase, but it is a lot less visible and it does not have the big hole or the 2 stitches side by side that we're used to seeing. So one more time, let's do one more invisible increase. So we're going to work a front loops only single crochet. And then in that same stitch, just in the back loop that we haven't worked yet, we're going to work another single crochet. So we've still worked 2 single crochets in the same stitch. We just did 1 in one loop and 1 in the other. All right, so let's look back on our invisible increases laid on top of a traditional increase. You can see the difference. Here's the traditional increase. Here's our invisible increase. Pretty slick, right? Now, while invisible decreases seem like they would be the perfect solution to hiding those holes, there is one caveat to them, and that is when you start doing more advanced crochet techniques, like adding texture to the surfaces of your crochet that makes it look like fur or feathers or things of that nature, you often need to work entire rounds or whole sections in just the back loop or just the front loop in order to give the texture that you're attempting. And if you don't have both loops of a stitch to work in, your invisible decrease obviously isn't going to work because you're not going to be able to lay your stitches on top of each other like this. So just keep that in mind if you're going along using invisible increases and you get to a section of a pattern that calls for an entire round of back loops only, though that round is not going to be able to have invisible increases. So don't let that bum you out. Still use your invisible increases when you want to, especially if you don't like the look of the traditional increase, or if you have a yarn that just really wants to show that great big gaping hole there. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that it gets you making seamless and pretty things the way you want them to. Thanks for watching a Hooked by Katie tutorial video. Please click subscribe and click that little bell so you get notifications every time I post a new video. And remember to go to hookedbykatie.com for more patterns, tutorials, and guides to help you improve your art.